Stories of ghost ships have fascinated people since time immemorial. Be they phantom ships like the Flying Dutchman, or real ships that are shrouded in mystery such as the Mary Celeste. Every corner of the world seems to have their own legend of a ghost ship. One such legend is the story of the Jenny. According to this legend, the Jenny was an English schooner that left its home port on the Isle of Wight in 1822. The following year, in 1823, the schooner would be reported missing, and it wouldn't be seen again until many years later. In September 1840, a whaling ship called the Hope was sailing through the Drake Passage when they spotted a battered ship in the ice. The ship appeared to still be manned because the crew of the Hope could see 7 men standing at attention on the main deck. But as they got closer to the ship, they discovered to their horror that these men were not standing dutifully at their posts. They were actually frozen in place. This ship was the Jenny, and Captain Brighton, who was the captain of the Hope, was the first to board the Jenny to investigate. When he moved below deck, he found the captain of the Jenny still seated at his desk, pen in hand, as if he had been frozen in place while he was writing his last entry in the ship's log, which read, May 4th, 1823, no food for 71 days. I am the only one left alive. What the crew of the Hope did with the ship and the frozen crew will differ depending on which variation of the story that you're hearing. Some say that the crew of the Hope would bury all of those that were frozen aboard the Jenny at sea. This included the captain's wife and dog, who had also been found frozen on the ship. Other variations of the story say that the crew of the Hope didn't want to disturb the bodies, so they left them as they were. The only thing that they took with them was the logbook. In this version of the story, it is also said that the ship would break loose from its icy chains and is now roaming the ocean with its crew. The earliest known source for this story appears to be an article in the Wiener Zeitung, published on the 19th of February 1841, and this story would be printed in 7 other newspapers over the next few days. Then in 1862, a popular German geographical magazine called Globus would recap the discovery of the Jenny in an article. According to this article, the crew of the Hope believed that the Jenny must have been caught in an ice wall where it would remain until the ice broke open. Like with any other missing ship, I went looking to see if this ship actually existed. Most often that involves looking through Lloyd's register. And the register does have a few ships called the Jenny, but it's unclear if any of these ships is the same Jenny that appears in the legend. As I mentioned in the beginning, almost every corner of the world has its own story of a ghost ship. So let's take a brief look at 2 of those ghost ship stories. The first one is a story that shares a lot of similarities with the story of the Jenny, and that is the Octavius. The Octavius was a three-masted schooner that was found west of Greenland by a whaling ship called the Herald on the 11th of October 1775. When the Octavius was boarded, the boarding party would find the entire crew below deck. All of them were dead, frozen in place and almost perfectly preserved. As in The Legend of the Jenny, the captain was found still sitting at the table in his cabin, and he was also still holding a pen with the captain's log in front of him. In that cabin, the boarding party would also find the bodies of a woman, a boy that was covered with a blanket, and a sailor with a tinderbox. Everything about this ship made the boarding party very uneasy, and the final straw for them was the scene in the cabin, so they grabbed the captain's log before leaving the vessel. According to the story, the last entry in the captain's log was from the 11th of November 1762, which meant that the Octavius had been lost in the Arctic for 13 years before it was found trapped in ice. A more modern story of a ship frozen in ice would be the SS Baychimo. Originally named the Ångermanälven, the SS Baychimo was used in trading routes between Hamburg and Sweden until the First World War. After the war, ownership of the ship would be passed to the United Kingdom as part of the reparations by Germany in 1921. The ship was renamed the SS Baychimo, and it would complete several successful voyages along the north coast of Canada. On the 1st of October 1931, the SS Baychimo would become trapped in pack ice. When she first got trapped, the crew briefly abandoned the ship and traveled to the town of Barrow to take shelter. After about 2 days, the crew returned to the ship, and by this point, she had broken free of the ice, so they boarded the ship and resumed their voyage. But the Baychimo would become mired once again on October 8th. This time, 22 of the crew would be retrieved by aircraft, while 15 of the crew would choose to remain behind with the intention of waiting out the winter if necessary. On the 24th of November, the area would be struck by a powerful blizzard. The crew built a wooden shelter to wait out the storm, and after the storm had passed, they emerged from this shelter, but there was no sign of the Baychimo. They searched the area for a bit before they concluded that the ship must have broken up and sunk in the storm. But then, a few days later, the crew would be informed by an Inuit seal hunter that he had seen the Baychimo about 72 kilometers away from their position. And after tracking the ship down, the crew figured that it was unlikely that she would survive the winter, so they retrieved the most valuable furs from the hull before they too were airlifted out of there, abandoning the SS Baychimo to its fate. But the Baychimo would not sink. Instead, it would be seen several times over the next several decades. During many of these sightings, the Baychimo would also be boarded, but each time people were either unequipped to salvage the ship or they were driven away by bad weather. The last recorded sighting of the Baychimo was in 1969. 38 years after she was first abandoned. At that point, she was stuck in the pack ice of the Beaufort Sea. After this sighting, it's unknown what happened to the Baychimo. The original report of the Jenny was allegedly deemed unsubstantiated, and many believe that the legend of the Jenny is just that, a legend, a ghost story. The fact that the legend of the Jenny has so many similarities with the legend of the Octavius might make one think that the Jenny might be just another variation of the story of the Octavius. In any case, the Jenny has not been seen since the reported sighting from nearly 200 years ago. If the Jenny was a real ship, could it still be frozen in ice somewhere? If it somehow broke free of the ice, like in some variations of the story, is it floating aimlessly in the ocean still? Or is it now located at the bottom of the ocean near Drake's Passage?